Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our program today. We hope that you're having a good weekend and a blessed Lord's Day, and we invite you to worship with us today at the Pyburn Street Church of Christ. We will come together this morning at 9 o'clock for Bible study, and we will have classes available for all ages. Following Bible study, at 9:50, we will engage in a period of worship. We will also come together again this evening at 6 o'clock for a period of worship, and we will gather again on Wednesday evening at 7 for Bible study. As well, we invite you to join us for the 5th annual Lawrence and Randolph Counties Bible Lectureship that will take place at Pyburn Street on September the 27th through the 29th. We will have 22 different speakers over a period of 3 days. We will have classes for both men and women, as well as combined sessions and evening keynote speakers. We invite you to come and be with us for this event. And for more information, you can go to our website, pyburnstreetchurchofchrist.com, and there you can find a full schedule of the events of those 3 days. In 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 9 and 10, the Apostle Paul writes, "But as touching brotherly love, ye need not that I write unto you, for ye yourselves are taught of God to love one another. But we beseech you, brethren, that ye increase more and more." The words of the Apostle Paul in this passage are just as applicable today as at any time. While the command and duty to love each other is one of the oldest and most familiar of all of God's commandments, a lack of brotherly love causes just as many problems today as ever. While all Christians know to love, we must follow the instruction of God to increase more and more in our love. In 1 John 2, we find a decisive explanation of the necessity of brotherly love. Verse 7 of that text reads, "Brethren, I write no new commandment unto you, but an old commandment which ye had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which ye have heard from the beginning." The context later identifies this commandment as the instruction to love one another. The beginning here points all the way back to Genesis, as the term is also used in the first verse of the same book. This sacred order proceeds from the very nature of God, 1 John 4 and verse 8, and is a directive tied to the very existence of God by inspired Moses in Leviticus 19 and verse 18. Friends, no time or place has ever existed without the mandate to love, for no time or place has ever existed without God, and God is a God of love. However, verse 8 of this same text indicates that the same command is now a new commandment, because the darkness is past and the true light now shineth. The riddle here alludes to the same principle seen in so much of the New Testament. Christ came not to destroy the old law, but to fulfill it, Matthew 5 and verse 17. Christ took many of the Old Testament laws and fulfilled them by bringing to light the imperative to keep both the law and the intended disposition of the law, Matthew 5, verses 18 through 48. In like fashion, Jesus illuminates the ancient commandment to love and fulfills it by commanding the intended measure of love. In John 13, verses 34 through 35, Jesus proclaims the newness of the commandment to love, saying, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another." God would now show humanity the fullness of love in the cross of Christ. In doing so, the law is made new. We're no longer commanded only to love in some fashion to be determined by our whims, but we are bound to love others as Christ has loved us. 1 John chapter 2 further explains the gravity of love's requirement. In verses 10 and 11, the scriptures say that whoever does not love his brother, no matter what he may proclaim to the world, he walks in the darkness, and knoweth not whither he goeth, because the darkness hath blinded his eyes. So how is it that we are to love our brethren? Well, friends, love demands that we meet the spiritual needs of those who are around us. To fail in this is to administer hate and not love. For brethren that keep the faith, the spiritual needs may not be as obvious, but they are no less urgent and pressing. Faithful brethren need to be exhorted with regularity. We're instructed to exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. Hebrews 3 and verse 13. To preserve the spiritual strength and purity of our brethren, we must continually offer encouragement. The Scriptures emphasize that the exhortation is to be made now. If we love our brethren, we dare not wait until they fall into weakness and sin before we offer our help and assistance. Exhortation is to prevent sin, not repair it. And proper exhortation keeps the Christian spiritually healthy, and preserving the spirits of our brethren is an action that our love should demand. One way to offer this strength is in the assembling of ourselves together, Hebrews 10, verses 23 through 25. By loyal attendance to the gathering of the saints, we can encourage those that assemble just as we are encouraged by their steadfastness. A simple act like attendance then becomes an act of love. The absence of regularity in gathering with brethren to be about the Lord's business shows not only contempt for the Lord's work, but also hatred toward the brethren who need our strength, just as we need theirs. Another method for loving faithful brethren is in doing our part for the church's work. No one enjoys working with those that, while you work, they simply sit back and watch. Friends, love does not allow others to toil while you sit at ease. Instead, Paul commands that we must, by love, serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, Galatians 5, verses 13 and 14. The Scriptures call our ministering to each other a labor of love that God will not forget, Hebrews 6 and verse 10. Also, without serving a brother directly, we can love them by doing our part in whatever work needs to be done. We should recall the gratitude expressed by Paul for the church at Thessalonica for their efforts in the work of faith and labor of love assigned to the church of our Lord, 1 Thessalonians 1, verses 2 and 3. So instead of delegating the duties of the kingdom to be completed by a faithful few, we must show our love for the Lord, for the church, and for our brethren by doing our part in the service of our Master. But now, how are we to love unfaithful brethren? Unfaithful brethren need love as much, if not more, than strong brethren. The unfaithful are weak and in desperate need of strength and correction. Our love for their souls must be fulfilled in the often unpleasant work of restoring them to the faith. It's often unpleasant because so many emotions and feelings are often hurt at the slightest word of correction. Very few like to be told that they need to change. Very few like to be told that they're doing something wrong. But love does what is best for others, not what is convenient. Just as Christ endured all for our souls, we must let no price be too high in the restoration of unfaithful brethren. The duty to restore is given in Galatians 6 verses 1 and 2, where we read, Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Once again, we read that the filling full of the law is in the actions of love. Refusing the need of a brother in a fault leaves both him and ourselves in darkness. In this effort, we are told to treat the erring brother as a brother nonetheless in the spirit of meekness. Meekness means that we must be under control, not filled with malice that drives souls away, or even overcome with kind emotions that might lead us to compromise the truth in order to keep everyone happy. We must meekly present the truth in love, so that the one in error can plainly see how to correct their sad situation. To the brethren, James writes, Brethren, If any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his ways shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins. James 5, verses 19 and 20. Now, friends, could any greater act of love be named than to save a soul from death? Well, of course not. This kind of love is precisely the measure of Christ's love for us, and is therefore the love that we must show. In this effort, we must remember that love demands persistence. Paul commanded that we warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, and be patient toward all men. 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 14. Once you were lost, and someone patiently taught you the gospel, and now you must patiently correct those that have left the service of God. The very nature of love requires this patience from us, for charity suffereth long, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity or love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 8. The attributes of love must be the attributes of our correction of the faithless. We must never fail or count any price too high in our efforts to save souls from spiritual death. Friends, upon love hangs all the law and the prophets, and our very identity as disciples of Jesus Christ. The Scriptures ask a very profound question of us concerning love, when it says, if a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother, whom he hath seen, how can he love God whom he hath not seen? And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God love his brother also. 1 John 4, verses 20 through 21. Therefore, let us love with the love of Christ, a love that cares for the souls of our brethren. Let us exhort faithful brethren to continue in their work of love. Let us do our part in that work, not permitting the duties of the church to fall upon a dedicated few. Let us strengthen weak brethren, and lovingly correct the erring for the sake of their souls and of our own. But in all things, let brotherly love continue. Hebrews 13 and verse 1. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today. We hope that you will take the things that we've studied today and apply it to your life. If you have any questions or comments or suggested lessons, we invite you to contact us at the Pyburn Street Church of Christ, Post Office Box 187, Pocahontas, Arkansas 72455. Or you can email us at pyburnstreet@gmail.com. And friends, please know that you are always welcome at the Pyburn Street Church of Christ. Have a blessed day.